So I think the last revolution happened at the dawn of the World Wide Web, and you couldn't imagine how much the rest of the world would come to depend on being connected or the jobs that spanned from that revolution. So today, AI is taking over the world, and I think we're about to see a similar explosion of careers, and I've got just the expert to talk about it. So Christina Stathopoulos is a data evangelist and advisor. After working for more than 5 years at Google and the Waze application, she led analytical studies and strategy in partnerships, and she branched off as a data evangelist to launch her own company. So Christina, tell us a little bit more about your journey from Google to Waze and becoming a data evangelist, plus then starting your own company. What motivated you to make those kind of transitions?
Of course. But first, wanted to thank you for having me on the show and also say welcome to all of our listeners.
Nice.
So a little bit about my path. I was with Google and more recently Waze for over 5 years. I was working in different data specialist roles. And it was an incredible experience, to be honest. It was a job that challenged me. It was a job that I learned something new pretty much every day. And I love the team that I was last on in Waze. That made it extra difficult to make the move to leave, but I knew it was time for a new challenge. I'm a big believer in jumping companies to propel your career. So I would say a good rule of thumb is 2 to 3 years before you should make your next move. So for me, I had been with Google for over 5 years. It was definitely past my prime time. So I decided to make a change. And while at Google, I had already begun working on many different, I would call like side projects, side jobs, as well as teaching on the side. I've been doing that for quite a few years at the university level. And so when I first started exploring my next opportunity, I thought it was a good time to try my hand at being an entrepreneur, or maybe we can call it like a datapreneur. And I already had so many opportunities of side projects coming at me. So I thought, why not try this full time? So now I'm running my own business. It allows me a lot of flexibility. I can pick and choose the work or the projects that I want to take on. So I can really focus on my passions instead of, what I'm assigned in my job, let's say.
That's amazing. And I really can relate to that. I think for me, it's always been not necessarily the time frame, but basically like the opportunities, your ability for growth, and, whether or not you feel like there's something else that you can do. So when I've gone through, being an individual contributor to a manager to going back to like an individual contributor, I always felt like there was something that I wanted to pursue. And it's been different things. Like, when I was at Tribune, where I build like a network of radio and TV station sites, I was doing just news sites, and then I moved on to, a management role where I built a network of sites from scratch. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I was like, well, I've designed and created like all these websites. I wonder if I could just do it all. Like, I wonder if you kind of want to challenge yourself. So I think that ability of looking for the opportunities that it can help you grow is really key and something that's very inspiring. And by the way, like, I've never met anyone who doesn't love Waze. My father-in-law even is like, I don't know what you call them, Wazeaholic. He's very proud of his ranking.
Well, like Wazers, yeah.
Wazers. He always makes me feel bad that I don't have the same ranking that he does. So that has to be though really difficult, that you want to grow, but you're in a great place, right?
It was really difficult. It was tough to make the move, and especially at Waze. Like I said, I had an amazing team, and I also loved the company. I loved the mission behind the company. It was a fun job. It was a fun company, a great brand. So making that move, but I had been with Google for over 5 years. Waze, I was approaching 2 years, and I have had this itch for a change for quite a while. So I needed to take the move.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of know when the right time comes, when you have that sort of hunger to, have an opportunity to go. And it's regardless. I mean, you're basically at Google, at Waze, you're basically like with two of the top companies in the world. I know that I feel like that about LinkedIn, but I always feel like, I've been here quite a lot longer than 2 years. So I just always feel like I'm constantly asking myself, Like, am I doing what I love doing? Yes. Could I do it somewhere else? Yeah, maybe, but it's really a great place that has just amazing people and opportunities. And it's always, thankfully, I think I picked a specific spot that's always changing. Like, it's never technology. I've done maybe 130 courses so far for LinkedIn Learning.
Wow.
And my job constantly churns. And, maybe 50 of those courses are online now because just the technology field churns so much that it's always feeding you into your hunger to learn something different. And, look at this whole AI thing that we're living through right now. It's a completely different beast. So it feels just like you're always, that hunger that you have for growth is always available to you. And just even in, if you looked at LinkedIn and the path that they have gone through, including things like video and live streams and all the things that they make available to you, just the job itself has changed all the time to where I think it's fulfilling me. So interestingly, we saw that the first thing that got disrupted, that this field of AI disrupted, was the developer field, through GitHub Copilot, which is now, everything is now going to be like a Copilot. Microsoft, Google, and others are targeting different products. So we're going to see it everywhere, like in Excel, PowerPoint, and Photoshop. So what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities, perhaps, that people aren't talking about in this new field?
It's a really good question. And I would say it's tough to say because the field is moving really fast. You know it. There's hundreds of new AI tools every day, and everybody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think talking specifically about AI and generative AI, selfishly, I've just been on the lookout for AI tools that are going to help me,
Mm-hmm.
that can help me personally, professionally. So any tool that can act as a personal assistant to help me do whatever task quicker or easier. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, one that I've just been playing around with is I'm a really big traveler. And I like to put together like very extensive travel itineraries, trying to do things that are off the beaten track.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of next month, I've got a 3-week trip through Southeast Asia. So I'm trying to see how AI tools can help me plan that trip.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple that I've stumbled upon. So you can use ChatGPT to help you with this, of course, but you also have some specialized tools. So there's
Mm-hmm.
roamaround.io, and there's also tripplanner.ai. And they like help you plan itineraries for what you need to see in each spot. You can like add in preferences of the things that you like to do. Do you like to do like historical things? Do you want outdoor activities? Um, they can also help you like make reservations, the pricing of things. So this has been great, like on a personal level, to play around with it. And then I think on the professional side, I think in general there's a lot of opportunity that lies in making like very highly complex coding tasks simpler. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
world doesn't know how to code, so less than 1% of the world knows how to code. So there's this massive opportunity in bringing the power of data and AI to those that cannot code. So I think anything in the realm of like low code, no code platforms that are enhanced with AI will be the future. Really, any tool that can help break down the complexities of analytics tasks and machine learning and broader AI projects that you're trying to bring into production. Tools around that. I know Einblick, I think that's how you pronounce it. Einblick is going to be launching soon, Einblick Prompt, which is like generative AI for data science workflows, but just trying to simplify them more and more. And then outside of all this generative AI talk as well, I think it's really important just data quality. Data quality has become top of mind for companies. And I think it's going to become more and more so just because companies are realizing the time is now. You need to adopt, data first strategy. You need to, incorporate data into all that you do. But if you don't have good data, it doesn't matter if you have big data, but if you don't have good data, you don't have good quality data, you're really not going to be able to get much out of it.
Yeah, that was one of the announcements that I wasn't expecting for some reason. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm not a data analyst, so I don't know that I'm, into all this stuff. So one of the big announcements was this sort of tool called Microsoft Fabric that they announced. I'm sure you've heard about it. And it's all about the data. So the data is really what has allowed AI to be able to do all these things. There is definitely sort of maybe a reemergence. I don't know what your thoughts are with the importance of data on LLMs. Basically, LLMs absorb a ton of data, but I think maybe some of the opportunities are that the data really needs to be more focused. And you mentioned the travel planning tools are a great example that sometimes, you don't need 175 billion parameters. All you need is like maybe all the parameters for planning a specific session. So what do you think about that fact that all these tools are kind of really relying on data and trying to figure out how best to kind of focus on that aspect?
No, data lies at the core of all of this. In the end, it all comes down to data. And I think we're seeing like a move from the big data era. We're still really in
Mm-hmm.
the big data era, but it's not just big data, but it's good data and it's quality data. Not, I don't know, messy data. Or I'm
Mm-hmm.
also quite concerned with the large language models that are pulling in all this data from the internet. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of the data is what I would label like
Mm-hmm.
toxic data. And that is going to almost, it's going to skew the answers that come out of the large language models. So we have to be very careful with it, in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the big news articles that I saw just, I think, yesterday was that Japan's actually now made it legal to use any copyrighted data to
Yeah, there's
train
no
LLM models. And what do you think
there's no
about that? What's
copyright. I saw that. No copyright if you pull it into the models, right?
yes? So
That's
that sounds crazy, scary. And I was just thinking at the same time, if you're an AI company, now you're really thinking maybe I should move some of my operations to Japan. Like that presents an opportunity that is almost irresistible to big companies. And so they will respond. And now that creates a precedent that if Japan is doing this, if somebody doesn't do the same thing, then now they have a competitive advantage. So in terms of like this idea of you gotta always balance the technology with business. So what are your thoughts about that? You've mentioned that one of the roles that you identified was this data translator, which basically is a role that kind of bridges the gap between those two things. And I think this is maybe a good example. There's always the two sides of the coin. It's got to be sensible for a business to perform, but then you get into lots of crazy, issues with the data.
yeah. So yeah, the data translator term. I also sometimes use the term data whisperer because
Mm-hmm.
a whisperer is a person that it's usually used to talk about animals. So a person that can tame or control animals. So we could say that a data whisperer does the same thing with data, taming the data, and then
Mm-hmm.
acting as a bridge between it and the business. But we can stick with the data translator term.
Mm-hmm.
A data translator, I think, it's a very unique role because it's supposed to sit right between the business teams and the technical teams, and act as this bridge between them. And it requires very unique skills to do the job well. So what they're really doing is they're supposed to be communicating the wants and the needs
Mm-hmm.
between each team to the other one. So they really need to understand the business needs of an organization and then be able to take these business requirements to the technical team and help implement them. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding what is feasible versus what is not, how it needs to be done to have the maximum impact on the business. And then on the other side, they also need to be very data savvy, so they can take their knowledge of data capabilities within the company to the business teams and then propose like new innovative ways that they could be using the data that they have available. And I would add as well, I've heard the term, a very similar one is an AI translator. It's the same idea, translating
Mm-hmm.
like AI between business and technical teams. And there's a really good book for this, written by a friend of mine, actually, Mika de Catalier, and it's called Wanted Human AI Translators. I was just with her
Mm-hmm.
in London a few weeks ago. But this is a great book to read a little bit more about what is this special role of an AI translator.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of people right now, when they're thinking about AI, they mostly think maybe developers, like that's where they first go to. They may go to data scientists, but this ability to really, I don't know, work in the two fields is really, I think, the key to where people are right now. Every business is trying to figure out how they implement some sort of AI strategy. And so, a technology person is going to have long discussions about the benefits of like open source versus closed source LLMs, like the difference in Lambda, Alpaca, GPT, like what's the right, model. Whereas what you really need to be thinking about is how these things get implemented. So do you feel that, I know that you came from a data science background, so you really understand the technology. And so do you feel that this kind of new role, does it require a lot of sort of background in the data? Can a non-technical person kind of start in here, or what's the right kind of like approach to this sort of position?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, you can have a wide range
Hmm.
of people that can qualify for it, but I think you do better the more technical you are. So the more you can really dive into and understand the data, and get hands-on with the data, then you'll be a better data translator. So in my
Hmm.
case, working in roles like this, I would be in the middle of the project. Like I would be developing it. I would be in the coding and so on. Um, so yes, I would say you'll be much better at it the more you can be like into the tech side.
Yeah, and I think definitely if you have to interface with developers, perhaps just an understand, like being able to communicate effectively does require a level of, technical expertise and an understanding on of the lingo. So if they do go llama or alpaca, you kind of know what they're talking about. You don't think of like Peruvian, animals or something like you understand. But then at the same time, like you have to be a savvy business person. So somebody with entrepreneurial
Yeah.
like knowledge, like you need to know both aspects of it. And I think that when people start talking about AI, they kind of go into, I don't know, their own silos of, no, open source is going to rule everything, or, we have big discussions on ethics and other things, but there's always that element that, you need to make sure that you understand, the business side of it. So what would you say is perhaps some of the things that you should like that a data translator should have that are non-technical skills?
Non-technical skills, the most
Yeah.
important is communication.
Hmm.
Being able to communicate with people, because you need to be prepared to be talking and or presenting in front of audiences that come from
Hmm.
a wide background. So you'll be working with business stakeholders, you'll be working with engineers, and you need to change your tone and the
Hmm.
vocabulary that you're using and so on, depending on the audience. And you get
That's a
good
good
with
point.
this really with practice.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, any public speaking,
yeah, I
like
think,
you have to just
yeah.
get experience doing it, and there's no, nothing else that you can do. Usually the class that you dread the most in college is either some sort of like group project or the public speaking class, which is funny because then at some point they kind of become like the most important things that you need to actually do in the real world. And traditionally, like developers are not known for like their social skills. Like they tend to be more introverted. So, if you can have somebody or find someone with the aptitude for both of those things, they don't need to be extroverts or gregarious in any way. They just need to understand, how to talk to people, and that aspect of being able to present things to others is the key. So maybe that's
I think
the
that's
one
why
thing. Yeah.
it's so difficult to find, because a
Hmm.
lot of the people in developer or even data science roles haven't worked on their communication skills as much. So it's like a very unique profile to find someone
Hmm.
that can fit to be a good data translator.
Yeah, and I think that you can maybe identify them by what they're doing. So, communication doesn't just mean getting in front of a ton of people, but it could be like your ability to write and your ability to communicate. Maybe, GPT and ChatGPT will be able to make those things a little bit easier as we're seeing some of those, I don't know, organizational skills and being able to talk, some of the tedium of it at least moving into, into some of the different models. So another thing that we've heard a lot about lately is this concept of prompt engineering. The ability to basically get the AIs to just give you the information that you want. And we've seen a lot of issues with accuracy. And we were just talking in the pre-show about this, this lawyer that looked up some case studies, and submitted them to the court, to the judge, who found out that a lot of the things that he submitted didn't really exist at all. And that's got to be so embarrassing. But the problem with some of these models is getting accurate results. So where do you see this concept of prompting and prompt engineering going or morphing in the future?
Yeah, first, my dad's a lawyer. So in case my dad ever listens to this, Dad, please do not do what that lawyer did. But so the prompt engineer. So I imagine this role of a prompt engineer. I think it's going to become less of a role, let's say, and more of a skill that everyone needs to have.
Hmm.
Just like today, all of us can use Google search to find information, or we use GitHub to find and compile code. This is all going to evolve, I think, into a new level of gathering information and generating ideas. And these newest AI models are going to lie at the core of it. So I think, especially large language models like ChatGPT, they're going to be evolving into what are called large multimodal models.
Hmm.
So, which means they're going to eventually take in various inputs, text, photos, video, code, music, etc., and then give various outputs. Again, text, photo, video, code,
Hmm.
etc. And so we're going to all, I think, need to learn how to use this technology to empower us on the job. So as an analyst or a data scientist, I can use prompt engineering to write code much faster and debug. Or as a teacher, I can use prompt engineering to help me create new ideas for assignments or to grade my papers. Or a graphic designer can use prompt engineering to bring their ideas to life much faster, much easier. So in the future, I think we're going to all be prompt engineers, but we need to learn how to use it to help us in what we do.
Yes, and I think that aspect of trying to get it to make sure the information is accurate is probably, I think, the biggest issue right now, that you really can't trust what it says. If you ask it to give you, say, a biography of somebody that you really know, like maybe yourself, it's surprising that you can tell that it just comes out with a lot of inaccurate information. And, I think that's perhaps something that's going to go away, hopefully. I mean, understanding how the model uses language makes it interesting. It's got to be retrained basically on, with a lot of human interaction into being able to give you the correct data. But I think that, at least for the time being, the prompt engineering is going to be required in order to be able to make sure that you are understanding how best to ask the models to give you proper things. So in terms of skills, what do you think? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I would just add, I think we're all going to we're going to learn to get better at this. Like we're all going to become our own forms of prompt engineers. It's very new, but we'll learn how to use it. And then about the hallucination problem, about making information up, I forget the name of it. NVidia launched something new to help with the hallucination problem, but I do not remember the name right now.
Oh,
They
that's
just released
interesting.
it like a month ago.
Wow, that we'll have to look that up. That's interesting
Yeah.
because, I guess, that's been one of the surprising success, stories. I think they reached $1 trillion in valuation recently, just out
They
of the
did.
fact that they are. And you're like, NVIDIA, isn't that the
Video
card that I
game.
put on my machines? Yeah, to play video games. And all of a sudden they have rocketed to
Yeah.
stardom, being, I think, in the top 5 of companies in terms of valuation. It's just a crazy story.
But when I
And
think about it, I'm like, why did I not think to invest in this a couple
I,
months ago? Like it makes sense now that I think about it.
yeah, so it's, it really, I think that we need to be looking at companies like that really do get it. So yeah, evidently in ZDNet reports, they say they can prevent chatbots from hallucinating. I think I did read something about maybe one of the techniques was to actually query different models and have them basically in technology, you would do what's called a general adversarial network, like have the models kind of argue with each
Challenge
other
each
about
other.
whether, challenge each other on the accuracy, and that that somehow maybe fix it. But I'll have to read this article more. But that's exactly, I think, the kind of development that, perhaps somebody that understands not just the technology, but also the business. I mean, that, NVIDIA, there's so many opportunities out there, and it's going to be interesting to sort of see the new breakouts. OpenAI, clearly a huge success story, but there's got to be other companies out there that are working on things that you've never heard of. Like we know Google, Amazon, Meta, there's talk of Apple maybe releasing, some sort of, virtual reality kind of headset like next week. And I know, like I've been saying, Apple has been too quiet lately. And recently, the last thing that you heard about Apple was that they were preventing their own people from using ChatGPT, because we heard about Samsung and how they had been pasting meeting notes, I guess, to like maybe summarize them into ChatGPT and other people, because when you insert things into ChatGPT, they are being inserted and training the models. So they were basically releasing code as well as intellectual property into the world. And so Apple has been too quiet, and next week is their WWDC, which is their huge developer conference. I know they're going to say something. I think the headset might be part of it, but they got to say something about AI, because they're the only big company left that is not in the fight. And, it's going to be either hopefully, I'm hoping it's not like Siri will now power your AI, because I have an iPhone and Siri is not that great. But,
Not anymore, no. I think you're on something, Ray.
Yeah, I think, we'll have to check it on the next show. We'll kind of like have a recap of what the heck they announced, and I'm thinking it's got to be some sort of partnership with somebody. Could be like, some people say, it could be Google, it could be Microsoft, it could be somebody else, maybe Meta. Or there's Anthropic. There's all these possibilities. It's just exciting. It's like a soap. I'm going to get some popcorn on Monday, and I'll be watching that announcement. I don't know what else I'm doing that day, but maybe I can like somehow get an AI to, be in all my meetings on Monday so that I can watch the show. That should be pretty interesting.
If not, the AI can summarize the meeting for you.
There, I think at one point I heard somebody had written like some sort of video thing that would be pretending to be themselves in a meeting. They just did that for an experiment, and so that way they didn't have to attend any meetings. What's really funny today is like you see the fight between like the teachers and the students. Like the students are all writing. You saw that story. We talked about it last week on the show that some teacher had flunked all their students in college for using ChatGPT. He ran all his papers that the students had written, and through some sort of software that identified potential ChatGPT usage, and it said that all their papers were written by ChatGPT.
Like Zero GPT.
Yeah, was it? Yeah. So
I don't know if it was, but
it could have been one of those applications. Zero GPT. Yeah, that's great. Anyways, he ran them all, identified that they had all had their papers written. So he like flunked them all. And so now we have students submitting everything through ChatGPT, and then teachers using ChatGPT to grade everything. So we basically have like an AI war going on, a war of the AIs happening. And man, it's a different world now. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And we need to rethink education, because
I think so.
In this way, I don't know. No.
It's not the best way to like ascertain, but it's sort of like an easy way. But now that when I got my master's, I remember my least favorite part was this one class where the teachers would have us read like 5 things, like either 5 book chapters or 3 book chapters and then 2 papers, or some combination of like papers and chapters. And you would always have to create a post that summarized everything you read in 4 bullet points. It was always like less bullet points than there were things to read. So I thought, well, it's easy if it's just 1. But now, like, that's a perfectly easy thing for ChatGPT to do, to summarize like stuff. It's what it's really talented as. So that can't be the way that person does it anymore, but it was maybe an easy way for them to. They know the source material. So interesting. So, anyways, so what would you? Okay, so there's obviously people need a lot of these skills. We talked about prompt engineering, perhaps a way of communicating between business and technology. So, how do people get these skills today? Like, what do you see in terms of like businesses, looking for the type of people that have the right skills out there?
Um, I mean, first of all, for people trying to get the skills,
Hmm.
just start playing with the tools now. Get your hands dirty, give it a try, experiment. There's no better way than learning by doing.
Hmm.
And kind of like I said before, but I think business instead of businesses hiring prompt engineers per se, I think they're going to continue to hire roles that they have now, but with expectations that you can effectively prompt engineer to do your work better
Hmm.
and faster. So for all of us workers, take time to take a step back and
Hmm.
consider how these new technologies apply to your job, how you can use prompt engineering to help you with what you do on a daily basis, and then start experimenting with that at your work.
Hmm.
Well, if you have permission, maybe get permission for
Yes.
it first. But it's almost like having a personal assistant or an extension to your brain. You just have to learn how to take advantage of it. And I think as
Hmm.
well, going along with all of this though, is that everybody needs to have this like basic data literacy, or we could call it AI literacy,
Hmm.
knowledge of how the technology works. Like what you were explaining about the lawyer
Hmm.
um, that submitted the court papers using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT had generated false information. This is something that you would know could happen if you were literate in the technology. So
Hmm.
make sure you maybe take some courses, read up on it, but get some basic level of data literacy and AI
Yes.
literacy to stop yourself from making these mistakes.
Yeah, because you did mention that he said that he did know that it wasn't accurate, like it could produce inaccurate things. So yeah, definitely. And, I tell people nowadays that this is a great time because there's no experts right now, right now on like AI literacy. You could be the expert, and just like when the World Wide Web first broke out, you have this unique opportunity to become all types of, have all types of expertise on all these things that people are unsure about. And there's a huge hunger for this type of knowledge. So what
Yeah.
about the roles? Like you've been a data scientist, that's maybe on the crosshairs of all this technology. Like, do you see that role changing now? Well, of course, I think everything is going to change. But if the computers are able to sort of gather so much data so quickly, how do you see somebody who's maybe in school studying for data analysis, or perhaps thinking about how do they retrain for this new economy? Like, what do you see that? How do you see this role changing in the future?
I think the role is going to change, but everything is going to change.
That's
Most roles
true.
are going to be modified in some way or another. With data science, I don't think it's one of those roles that's going to be replaced. I think there's a lot of it's like overhyped, this job replacement. Everyone's going to lose their jobs, but I think particularly for any of these data scientists, data engineer, data analyst, all of this family
Hmm.
of data jobs, they're just going to be, like I said earlier, empowered. They can be empowered by the technology to do
Hmm.
their work much quicker. I think data scientists will be able to spend much less time with that they're doing today. So instead of spending hours upon hours like cleaning data or debugging code or getting into the intricacies of the syntax of your code, or worried about optimization, you can use these AI powered assistants to help you do it, to help produce your code much more efficiently.
Hmm.
So if you use the technology right as a data scientist, you can become much more productive at your job. You can be like one data scientist can do the work of five maybe.
Hmm.
But I don't
Yeah.
think that they'll be replaced per se. It's just that now you'll be a lot more productive for the company. You'll have a lot more output, and you can
Hmm.
also focus your ideas on creative tasks or trying to find ways to bring value to the business.
Yeah, I think that what I always tell people is when I was, in my earlier years, you used to, shipping used to be a lot slower, right? things would take like
Before
4 to 6 weeks
Amazon.
for delivery. Yeah. Before Amazon, right? And then somebody figured out how to make shipping super efficient. And what did we get? Did we get like less shipping? No, we got like a lot more shipping, like basically faster, more efficient. And I think that we're going to see something similar in data scientists. Like, when I was at Tribune Interactive, we used to have data scientists working for us way back then. And their jobs weren't like, their jobs did entail like, doing like SQL queries and, getting the data. It was a very sort of manually laborious type of job. But their jobs was really their ability to sort of understand what data they needed to gather and being able to, almost like you said, be a communicator and let people know, okay, we're looking at all this data. Here are the interesting parts. And I think that one of the things that, AI isn't good at is knowing what makes an interesting sort of analysis of data. So, they're good at modeling, potential paths that things can take. But in terms of like knowing, out of these different insights, this is really the one that you should be looking at. And perhaps we should maybe expand on that. I think that that's what a good data scientist is able to do, not just do the mechanics of looking through data, but being able to, in that case, like for us, it was helping the reporters, like, okay, I looked at the information that you needed and I can identify 4 things that I think you might be interested in pursuing a little bit further, or through this analysis, we proved that what the thing that you were researching wasn't true. Or even understanding like what things to look for. The computers don't know that. They just, if you look at the current state of technology, it's all about figuring out how to get the computers to understand what a good thing is versus a bad thing. A lot of the training is, all right, this answer that you're providing compared to these other 15 answers isn't as good. The best answer that really people are going to appreciate is this one. And it's even tough to like explain that to a computer. Like sometimes you don't know why stuff like a good idea is good. That kind of belongs, I think, to humans, that, computers are, I don't know if they'll ever get to be that good.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And it's not just and a lot of data translator. Really, this really goes
Mm-hmm.
into the data translator role, but not just communicating it from the business, but many times the business doesn't know what they want, or they don't know how to ask the right questions. So a data translator or even data scientists can help with this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really like understanding what everybody's saying, and then I guess morphing it, evolving it into something that we can do with the data that we have. But I would say that oftentimes business or sales don't know what they want or don't know what they're asking for. So you have to have somebody there that can really help bring it all the way to the technical side and make a connection.
That's true. And I think that that's the true genius of a data translator or a data analyst. Like the most important thing with these tools is understanding what the right questions are. If you can't do that, they're not going to be able to help you. They're going to give you all kinds of bad information or make things up. One of the engineers that worked on GPT-4 was saying that sometimes like you can prompt it by telling it that it has an IQ of 120, because if you tell it that it's smarter, then it'll give you a better answer. So that sort of like understanding what you need to do to get the computers to give you better data and understanding like the right questions to ask is the skill that maybe you weren't thinking about it. Like maybe as a data analyst, you're like, oh, let's test you on how good SQL is to like query the data. Well, SQL may not exist in an AI future. It may just be English. So that ability to communicate and understand like, hey, this is what you should be asking is going to be the skill. So maybe less focus on, the querying or the, the mundane work, and more about the conceptual part of getting good data. So, all right, I have a special heart for developers, my peeps, my friends, the people that watch most of my stuff. What do you think about developers and your role as data translators? What do they have any hope? Are computers going to be, doing all their work as well? What do you think? How do their
I,
roles kind of evolve?
no, I'm not convinced yet that they're going to be replaced. I don't know about your thoughts because I think you come from more from this world, but I still think they're going to be like the empowered worker that they
Mm,
can use this just to produce more than they're producing today with the help of AI. Um, because I think you still need somebody to that really understands what's going on. Like you can't hand it all over to the computer to do. You need somebody
mm.
who can really understand the intricacies of the code. I mean, I don't know what you think, Ray, coming from the developer
Yeah.
world, but are
So
you worried about your field?
I well, I think there is going to be some level of impact just because of everything that the computers can do. If you can maybe do the same thing with less people, that could have an impact. And some of the junior roles, I think, are going to be more challenging to some of the like the building tests and doing some of the analysis because the computers can do so much now. But again, I think like if you're banking on the fact that you can really write a lot of great code, the computers are just going to be able to do that better than you are in the future. So what is the essence of what you're doing when you're developing? I think you should try, figuring out the sort of more creative, like, like anything, just focus on the things where people aren't or where the AIs aren't, like the AIs aren't capable of understanding good and bad. I love what Sam Altman said, the CEO of OpenAI said, AIs are good at tasks, not jobs. Like they can't really do a whole job, but they're really good at doing tasks. So I think like you should really look back and think about, I'm going to be able to do things a lot quicker, more efficiently, faster, perhaps better. The other thing is if you're working with an AI, it is a communications challenge because often you'll ask it something and it'll give you some reasonably looking code. But just like the lawyer, that code is you probably on occasion have some errors and unless you understand how to test them, what it gave you back, like you can't just assume that the computers are going to write code that's going to work. You have to know, you have to be able to read the language that they're giving you and understand what it's doing wrong, or there's no amount of AI that is going to help you like unscrew up a development project if you don't understand like the language and what you are trying to get it to do. It's the same thing. It's like understanding the questions to ask is the key to making a successful AI, I guess, partnership. So, it's the same thing regardless of whether you're a data scientist or somebody in business. AI is going to help you do your job faster, better, more efficiently. Perhaps it'll lead to less people, but maybe not because look at shipping. Like we have, we did not get less shipping people. There was definitely a ton more people out there delivering more stuff. So I
It's a
think,
great example, by the way. I didn't think
yeah, well,
about
thank
that, but
you.
it's a really good
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fantastic. And it also feels great, right? Like getting stuff then like the same day. My wife's really impressed with me when I order something and it's there that night. She can't believe it. I can't believe it because I'm old enough to remember the 4 to 6 weeks. That was ridiculous. Ridiculous. You know, um, so I think we're gonna see that same sort of change.
I think
So
so.
in
I think so.
yeah, in this way that AI is affecting the marketplace and doing these monotonous tasks that it used to be up to masses of people to perform. So what do you think about ethically for these businesses? What do you think is the right way to move to adjust to some of these changes?
Yeah, another good question, a really tough one. Because a lot of people are talking about like the ethics of job displacement.
Hmm.
And I think it's nothing new, to be honest. This has been
Hmm.
like a societal worry for the last, I don't know, century. But nowadays we're hearing a lot. We're hearing the resurgence of the 4Ds. Not sure if you've probably stumbled upon it before, Ray, but the 4Ds that AI is going to replace for jobs. So it's going to replace jobs that are dangerous, that are difficult, dirty, and dull. You mentioned monotonous tasks, so monotonous task would go into that like dull bucket. But in
Mm,
an ideal world, yes, AI would replace all of these jobs that we don't want to do really, so that we can dedicate ourselves to things that are more creative or fulfilling. But even if this is to happen, I think the problem is how do we adjust to these changes without leaving a lot of people behind, especially people in third world countries that are doing a lot of these monotonous tasks to begin with. Um, I think we've experienced transitions like this in the past. Even the shipping example that you made, a lot of it is automated now, but we still have now new jobs to help with that. But we even had like the transition from when we were using horses to move around. You had like the horse drawn carriage, and then you moved to
mhm,
cars. Or you had a lot of assembly line workers in the past, and now they were replaced by robots. But I think the difference with today is how fast the technology is moving. And that's what I'm most worried about. It's moving really fast, and also it's having a very widespread impact on a lot of different jobs. So it's not
mm,
just going to be focused on assembly line workers, it can be lawyers, it can be analysts, it can be a whole lot of different jobs. And at the same time, some of these workers, I think, are being empowered while others are being replaced, or some of
mm,
jobs are being created or enhanced while others are completely disappearing. So I think the transition in this case is much tougher. It's going to happen a lot quicker. So we need to be careful, or a lot of people could get left behind. I
mm,
think for a business to navigate this situation ethically, which they should, is that they need to consider that humans are always like a critical central part of a workplace.
mhm,
Technology can augment a lot of what we're doing. It can enhance it, but we can't depend on full automation for everything. Like you said before, AI is good at tasks, but it's not good at a job. We
mhm,
still need people to do that. Um, so I think of instead of focusing like on how machines can or computers, machines can replace workers, I think instead we should be thinking about like new ways of human machine interaction on the job. So how can we bring these new technology in to empower our workers on the job, and in general increase productivity or output? So instead of it just being like a cost focus,
mm,
let's get rid of headcount, why don't you think about it another way and increase productivity so you can keep maintaining this headcount? Just using machines to empower you in that case.
mm,
Talking about this though, recently I stumbled upon this article by MIT. It was a couple years old, but when I was reading it, I thought it was really interesting because they were talking about these four levels of progress for automation. And the first one was cost focused automation, which is what I mentioned before. And it's what a lot of companies do today. It's very much focused on cost. And then next, you have performance driven automation, which we do have some of that going on today. Then the third one, you have worker centered automation. And then finally, the last one was socially responsible automation. So I think we're there. You go. You've got it on the screen. So I
mhm.
think we're moving from level one, level two. Hopefully, we'll move into level three, and so on. But I think just having businesses keep that top of mind. That this doesn't have to be about cutting headcount, but rather bringing
Mhm.
in the new technology to empower the workers that you already have to be even better at their jobs and to produce more.
Yeah, and I think we talked about how Amazon definitely changed shipping forever, and it wasn't that they were just trying to figure out how to sell more products, but what if they could bring some efficiencies in a market that needed it? And so, why can't you think more like an Amazon and thinking, you know, what is our opportunity here? In the same way that I mentioned that individuals, there is no AI, there are no AI experts right now. This field is brand new. There are no companies that have a stake that dominates any specific AI industry. There are some big players out there, but there are so many opportunities. So companies should really be looking at how do we, take advantage of the wide open field right now and find ways of involving the people, and then consider, listen, some people are going to be displaced, but let's implement some ways to train people to give them the ability to explore some of these new fields. And, that might be the best thing for our business, like to explore some new areas that we perhaps weren't thinking about. And also it's the way that companies survive. So, companies that don't change tend to go away. So this is an existential moment, not just for Google and other companies, but for everyone to be thinking about how do they do this. And it might be that they end up creating way more jobs than they ever had if they do things right. So,
And this
yes,
reminds
go
me
ahead.
as well. I was in London a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and on this AI tour, and we visited a company called Automated Architecture. And it reminds me of the conversation that we're talking about, because this AI focused company, Automated Architecture, what they're trying to do is automate or bring AI into a lot of the architecture construction industry. And I believe the CEO was saying that, one of the co-founders was saying that people, have almost like argued that, oh, you're going to replace the construction workers, you're going to take their jobs. But that's not the idea. He was showing some statistics, and unfortunately I don't remember them, but there's a huge lack of workers for construction. And
That's true. That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a huge lack of workers for construction. So what he's trying to do is help fill that gap where we don't have workers, and then
Mm.
empower the workers that we already do have. So we also have to consider where it can help fill in these gaps, in all sorts of different industries.
Interesting. Wow, I'm learning so much. So, what about, okay, so there's this concept of regulation we talked about, Japan and their move to just make copyright not an issue when training these models. So, what is your take on regulation? What needs to happen, and how much do you think that, will prevent some of these issues that people are concerned about, while acknowledging that, things, maybe we can't slow this thing down?
Yeah, it's so regulation is a hot debate right now. I
Yes.
think job displacement is one very small worry
Yes.
next to
Mm.
much
I love these
larger
questions,
worry.
by the way. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a lot more pressing issues that we need to be concerned about outside of job displacement.
Hmm.
Things like bias and discrimination in AI systems, the proliferation of misinformation, fake news, and then as well, like just this lack of control or understanding in all of the decisions that are being made by the AI systems. I definitely agree that, I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that we need more regulation. We need boards or ethics committees that need to be regulating this. Things are moving fast, though, and I am not very confident with regulation keeping up because it hasn't tended to do so well in the past, and I don't see it speeding up right now. Um, but what also worries me on the regulation side that I don't see being spoken about as much is not just the speed, because I think that's not new to anyone. Regulation is not keeping up, but more so, I'm worried about like the breadth of the technology. So AI doesn't have borders. AI is
Mm.
global, and we're trying to regulate this country by country, maybe regional as well, like Europe. But there almost needs to be some sort of large scale regulation, or it's going to be very unbalanced. And certain countries are going to pull ahead, others are going to fall behind. I don't know if it's appropriate to even compare it almost to like we did with nuclear weapons, but there needs to be some sort of global agreement. I know that's easier said than done. There is a lot of work being done on all of the concerns and the ill effects of AI. I've been reading up a lot on it. We know that the European AI Act is being worked on right now. It's going to be the first of its kind enforcing laws on AI, on regulating AI. But I can only hope that we somehow come to an agreement soon and we figure this out as well more globally rather than trying to tackle it, locally as we're doing right now.
Yeah, individually, I think that is a good idea to figure out how to do things globally, because then we get into, we mentioned the issue with Japan. And, my first thought was, okay, well, that means that now all the companies are going to just go train their AIs in Japan, which, that's
It's
why
like
they
the
did it. Because
opposite
they,
of Europe. I think everybody's going
exactly.
to leave Europe and go to Japan.
Yeah, so that's the danger because businesses tend to gravitate towards opportunities, and so we do need a bigger plan. I do like something that OpenAI did recently, which is their plan to basically have this grant for new programs. They did this like open source or crowdsource AI regulation program where they're giving $100,000 grants to fund experiments into how do we set a democratic process for designing what rules AI systems should follow. There's a lot, I think, of really interesting things that technology can do. Some of the blockchain technology that we perhaps were laughing at a while back can maybe address some of these sort of uh, issues of keeping track of who's using what. Like when you use a piece of art from somebody, how do they get credit? Well, that can really be managed and embedded, but it has to be responsible because you don't want any, I don't know, you don't want too much government regulation to control the flow of knowledge and information. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities here as well. I do like this approach from OpenAI that maybe it needs to be more than just individual countries. Individual countries, some of them will take too long. And it's just like how some countries have take advantage of other countries having too much regulation in like perhaps something like banking. And so what you see is the money just move to those like maybe smaller, less regulated countries. Perhaps we're
Yeah.
just, regulation is great, but getting it right may just be an impossible human problem that governments aren't sort of structured to be able to handle.
Yeah.
So
No,
talk
no,
a
I
little bit about
completely agree.
maybe I'm sorry, talk a little bit perhaps about some of the things that you use personally. We talked about the tool that you use for travel, which was fantastic. Thank you very much because I did was trying to plan my Panama trip that I'm taking soon, so I appreciate that. But what do you use like every day, and what do you think are some of the interesting things that make your life easier?
Yeah. Well, give Trip Planner out. Give that a try because it can definitely help you find some good
Hmm.
ideas. So outside of that, of course I love using ChatGPT, almost just like chatting with it through everything that I do, helping me with
Hmm.
content creation and helping me with generating ideas for classes and so on. And I have found it hallucinating in my work. So this is why you have to be careful that you're not delving into something that you don't know much about. Like I can't
Mm.
just become a lawyer tomorrow because I don't know anything about it. I wouldn't be able to challenge ChatGPT. Um, Outside of that, I've been kind of playing around with. I've been hoping that Canva. Do you?
Hmm.
I don't know if you use Canva, but Canva's been incorporating some generative AI features, and I'm hoping that those are going to get better and better because that would be great for just creating content, creating slides, and so on. Um, as well, I would say like there's one that's called Text to
Hmm.
Text to SQL.ai to play around with AI. But of course, if you're using company data, don't go and give away your company data here. But that can help you play around with your SQL queries. And I think on
Interesting.
a yeah, on a broader level though, not just playing around with the tools, but for me it's been really interesting just following the developments in the field. And that's really hard because there's a lot going on right now.
Hmm.
And in the past when I've been trying to keep up to date with all of the changes, I'm a big fan of books. So traditionally I just read lots of books. I run this hashtag book a week challenge on LinkedIn. I've been doing that for years. But with I've realized with how fast things are moving today, books are not enough. I wish
Mm.
they were, but they're not. They take time to write, they take time to publish, especially if we're talking about topics around data and AI. So they're becoming outdated very quickly. So I'm supplementing my reading of books a lot more with like newsletters, different
Hmm.
newsletters. I love the Emerging Tech Brew. That's more like a general emerging tech, but it's great. Um, as well, there is, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Ajit Jayokar. He's out of Oxford, and he has an artificial intelligence newsletter that he publishes on LinkedIn. And then as well, there's another one, the Algorithmic Bridge on Substack. But there's lots of different newsletters, And then, of
Hmm.
course, I follow thought leaders on LinkedIn. So, two of my favorite to follow are Ali K. Miller and as well Cassie Kozyrkov. So, I follow them to just see what they're
Hmm.
talking about, what they're posting about, so I can understand the latest.
That's a good point. Like a lot of, I mean, just making sure that you're surrounded by good sources is really great because these people can synthesize. And again, I think that the key is that they can do what ChatGPT can't, which is letting you know what's really important about a specific topic and being able to surface those things. One of the things we try to do in this show is making sure people know about all these interesting things happening in Japan, the lawyer case, like, and all these different resources. So definitely follow you and follow some of these people that you're talking about. I love newsletters too. I am subscribed to so many. I need to go and reduce the amount. I feel like my sort of needs are changing with AI in the field, and I'm finding, like in my programming background, like a lot more an interest in what AI is doing and how it affects everything. So my newsletters, I'm reading like less like the JavaScript newsletter for some reason, and more like the AI and Python now. Who knew that was going to happen? So thank you so much for coming and all the resources that you've given us. I really appreciate it. I want to say
Of
that
course.
there's, of course, a few places where you can learn more about this show. There's a LinkedIn page that you can subscribe to, and you can be notified of news and changes. We have the newsletter that has the show notes, links from the episode. So if you missed any of the links, I have even more links that we weren't able to necessarily cover. So if you want to get all that stuff, subscribe to the newsletter, and probably late tonight I'll have it all done, and it'll be sent to everybody's inbox. It's a great way to watch the show. If you can't be here every week, you can definitely get an email that has a link to the video, highlights, show notes, and all the good stuff. There's also a YouTube playlist where you can watch all the episodes. And now we have just recently launched a way of listening to this as a podcast, just in case you want to do it while driving somewhere or perhaps walking around. Like, if you do like a long walk with your dog, maybe you'd be able to, maybe a hike with your puppy would be a great time, because this is an hour show. So I just want to thank you so much. I did want to talk about next time we have one of your friends that is coming on the show. I don't know if maybe you can give us a little bit introduction about Sadie, but she has this really interesting background. So I'm really excited about having her. What you mentioned that she was your friend. So what can you tell us about Sadie? I'm sorry.
Sadie founded Women in Data. That's how
That's right.
I know her. I know she
Hmm.
has a really interesting background, I believe, from like neuroscience,
Yeah.
and then moved into like AI and data science. So I'm personally very much looking forward to this episode because she's always got amazing things to say.
I know, and I really do love that I get to talk to people with, I do watch a lot of YouTube videos whenever before everybody comes up, and that's how I found out about your Castilian Spanish background, that that
Yes.
you had an accent. I was, where is that accent from? And yeah, I was, when I was looking at her background, it was really interesting to see that she's the founder and CEO of Women in Data, but that she also has this neuroscience background. And so I want to learn more about what she thinks that some of these AI tools are doing and what they're thinking. And will we eventually be able to reach the ultimate goal, which is an artificial general intelligence, which is an AGI, which has all kinds of potential other
I,
issues that could come up, right?
I want to hear her opinion on that. I'm very curious
I
to hear
am.
what I have my own opinions about that. I would like to hear what she thinks about that coming from
Yeah.
neuroscience.
It's going to be such a great episode. I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It was so much fun. I feel like out of everybody listening, I am the number one fan of the show, and I get the most out of it. But I really appreciate you taking the time. So take
Of
care.
course. Thank you for having me on. And thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
my pleasure. All right. Bye bye.